We are on the first almost failed live stream of SEOconspiracy.com. It was the first ever stream. It's been a bad tech day for me and a half bad tech day for you. And it's definitely a conspiracy theory to stop us from talking. Because I'm lucky to have my friend Kristine Schachinger on board, who is definitely very qualified to talk about American politics, about technology, about those four specific companies, and what was said and not said, what was right and not right. Like I said before, but nobody could hear me, I felt like we watched a different TV show. And
not the same one, but just we have different perspectives based on where we're situated in the politics and the world right now.
And those are cognitive bias that make people see the same thing and understand different things. That the brain is messing with us this way. But that was in the heat of the moment. Since then, time has passed. A few days. I watched a couple of times. I took a lot of notes. So for the first question was, I asked you to rank from the worst to your most favorite as far as the representation of the CEOs, and the least you said was Zuck. Then there was then you said Bezos. No.
Yeah.
Then
they're about the same spot.
Then Tim Cook from Apple, and then
no, Tim Cook was probably
the best.
I mean, Apple has their issues, but they have been more transparent than the other companies, and he didn't really get asked a lot of questions.
And you thought Pinchar from Google did fine?
Oh, I didn't think he did fine. I don't think he was 100%.
Yeah, but out of the four,
yeah, I think Cook was probably the most forthcoming, except on the question, did China ever steal any technology? I thought that was kind of, and then Google, and then Facebook and Amazon. Bezos and Zuck running about the same, both pretty bad.
Here's my ranking. The worst, number 4, Google.
Yeah, no, I don't see that.
Number 3, we'll go. That's why it's going to be a cool debate. we'll see. Number 3, Zuck. And I'm surprised myself to have Zuckerberg before better than Google. Then Cook, and then Bezos, or Bezos Cook, depending on different issues.
Are you rating them based just on their answers or something else?
No, just in my opinion, just the general feeling of how truthful were they, how well they commented, because we can't really call them answers or rebuttals. And in this 5-minute time limit, we'll talk about this.
That was terrible. They should change that format.
Yes, but it's the format that they had to deal with, and I really felt like the ones I downgraded is because I thought they were trying to do a keynote. Every single time. When if we want to, we're not going to rank all the Congress men and women, but if I had to, my favorites were definitely the ladies, the 3 of them. The worst one was Mr. Jordan, in my opinion. But if you look at when Jordan asked Pinchard about the 2016 elections, every single time, it took him like 4 attempts to get a straight answer. Every single time he was going on the keynote type of approach, if you know what I mean. I
didn't hear Jordan ask many actual questions related to elections, more accusations on censoring Republicans.
So I just watched them like an hour ago. Yeah. Okay, the question was, are you gonna rig the elections in 2020, are you gonna favor Biden over Trump?
But they don't favor either. That's
No, the answer should have been no, we won't. Simple. Okay? No, we won't. Instead of trying to say, no, in 2016 we didn't. Just say no, we are not going to favor any candidate. It took.
I can understand that though.
No, but it took 4 attempts to get a straight no, we will not rig the elections in 2020.
Well, I don't. I think the question was so. I'm trying to think of the right word for it. So false in its premise that Google's one, rigging elections, and two, rigging anything against conservatives. They just have bad SEO most of the time. That I think if I was the CEO of a company the size of Google, where stock prices can rise and fall, my answer, I might want to be a little, trying to caveat it so that I'm very specific. So, I mean, no, yes, you're right would be a better answer, but I don't think he was trying to be evasive in that. I think he's just trying to figure out how to answer such a ridiculous question. I mean,
what I want to know from Google's CEO is how I want to know his yoga techniques, because he could stand still for 6 hours, not moving. I admire how he
he was very calm.
No emotion, no poker face during 6 hours. Wow, that's talent.
A very, very long time, so I'm sure this isn't his first rodeo.
Yeah, but he's from India, so maybe he learned some.
Oh, maybe. But I mean, Google's under scrutiny for many, many years, so I have a feeling he's probably answered many congressional questions.
But when you go to, first of all, let's backtrack again. Like I said, I was not expecting anything grandiose from the politicians. I was expecting politics, but I think right away, I went behind the bullshit, and I tried to find the good in what they were expressing, and I did find some good, and I wrote it down. But on the other hand, I found that the CEOs were not well prepared to the exercise, especially that 5-minute constraint, and the fact that it's not a trial. It's an accusation that it's more like a comment that you are supposed to make than trying to convince them. They're already convinced, okay? You will not change their minds in a couple of minutes. Or maybe I understood wrong the way these kind of hearings go. What's your point on that? What's about the format of the hearings?
One, I think the 5 minutes, I mean, they do that in a lot of hearings now, so it's not just that hearing. The 5 minute is kind of silly. Like, it should be like maybe 5 minutes for the questioner, the congressperson, and then the person can answer for 5 minutes. But the idea that the entire engagement has to be 5 minutes long is what makes it a really bad hearing, because if you're trying to get a point and the person answering is belaboring, they're using a lot of language to make it, then you want to cut them off because you don't have that much time to ask your questions. And there is going to probably be legislation that comes out of this hearing and out of this investigation. So they want to get some specific things answered before they make the bills, agree to the bills, whatever happens to come out of it. And so they're very, they cut people off, like, well, they can't answer. And that's true. But at the same time, they don't have the time to wait for somebody to elaborately answer a question. So it's a really bad format. It really should maybe be 5 and 5 minutes or something like that. That 5 minutes is just not enough time.
Yes, but again, that's all we got. My hope in these hearings is very big, because since the beginning, these companies got slapped around from the EU and DOJ is really the only player in town who can do something about the supposed malpractice, and that will go over. Is there a monopoly? Are there predatory practices and so on and so on?
I would agree. All of them have predatory practices.
and what could come out of it. But if we go through the first, the introduction, okay? It was stated by the chairman, if a company arms people, anybody, competitors, employees, whatever, we will choose another option. In the case of technology, we don't have another option.
Right, that's true.
Can,
I mean, most of my friends today say they would leave Facebook if there was an option to leave Facebook. So
at the
and that's
point,
not the only one. That's just one of the points. So.
I got into the whole like privacy, respect of privacy journey type of thing. You know, I kind of got disgusted by the way, especially like we are part of the problem as digital marketers, you know, and the way we use data, and I think it went too far. So if I look at the alternatives, like if you really want to live a healthy relationship with the internet, it's impossible. It's just there's no way. You just gotta cut off the wire, cut off the the router, just turn it off. There isn't already there isn't, it doesn't exist. The alternative to the tracking, the profiling, and it's not about China. It's it makes me laugh. The whole TikTok dilemma. I mean, come on. What does the Chinese government is going to do with the kind of data that TikTok will provide? It's silly. And anyway, they all spy. Google is the biggest of them all. It's a fact that there's domination of the market by these four companies. Nobody can deny that. And can you please explain to us, foreigners, the concept of capitalism and when too much is too much? Who are you trying to attack?
I have a cat that's on a ledge. He never goes on and is not supposed to be on.
If you need to stand up.
Give me 1 second to let me get.
If you please don't throw a cat on camera. People got in trouble for that. some Twitch streamer got banned from Twitch because she.
I would never throw my kitty cat.
No, but it's not like a throw. I mean,
sometimes.
Come on, it's a cat. If you throw it like behind your head, it will not.
I'm not going to throw my cat, and he's 15 pounds. So, no, he has a thing when he wants something like treats. He gets up on the ledge and he just starts knocking stuff off. But he picked a new ledge that has stuff he can't knock off without causing a problem. So that's sorry. I was muting, covering my mouth and yelling at him to get down. Sorry. Anyway.
Please, you're like at home. If you need to go, just tell me. Do you think?
We're good. He's already down.
Yeah, but bathroom break or whatever. Because
we're good. We're good.
I'm not letting you go for a while.
I'll let you know if we get to that point. He's a tangle. He gets himself in trouble sometimes.
Please explain to us, foreigners, capitalism. When enough is enough. Like the chairman said, Rockefeller, Carnegie, these guys abused centuries ago, and it's happening again in the digital age. So you have some safeguards. You can do whatever you want until when?
Well, the thing is, one, there's a mistake in the United States by a lot of our citizens that we're actually capitalistic. We're a mixed socialistic capitalist economy like most. The problem is our socialism happens to help the rich, not so much the poor. We have, some socialism and safety nets for the poor, but a lot for the wealthy. So a perfect example of one of the rules made to help the wealthy, not now, this was back in a few years ago. The Bank of America was upset that companies like Apple and Google were keeping their money offshore. But if they brought it onshore, they would be taxed for it. So they couldn't have that money in their bank, right? They couldn't use that resource. So they developed a part of the Bank in New York for Bank of America that's international. That's another country's land, like an embassy would
Mm-hmm.
be, inside the bank. So they run those computers in that portion of the bank to run the money that, if it came in officially to the United States, would be taxed, but wouldn't be taxed if they ran it through that part of the bank.
Got it.
So the thing with capitalism is, in the pure sense of capitalism, right, is that it's a free market economy and there's no regulations. The market regulates itself. We've never had that. That's never existed on the planet. Also, one of the originators of capitalistic thought actually said that if man can't put another man's benefit equal to his own, then we'd have to have regulations. You can't have a free market economy at that point. So the originators of some of the originators of capitalism didn't even agree in pure capitalism, right? They agreed that once regular men were being harmed by it, then regulations must be put in by the government. So, unfortunately, though, we have a myth of capitalism in this country where we just let billionaires get richer and richer and richer and richer and more powerful, more powerful, more powerful, because they have the money to change the laws, to have the lobbyists to change the rules that favor them as they go and get bigger, right? So I don't know that you can say America has capitalism. I think you can say that we have a myth of capitalism in a country that uses way too much socialism for the wealthy and not enough for the people that are in the lower wage brackets.
My memoir in college was at the end of for my bachelor. Title was America is a plutocracy, so governed by Pluto, by a bunch of people. And I traced it back to finally, well, those who came with the Mayflower, okay, the first ones. And they did put a system in place. You do have the old money, new money, and even if you are lobbying, even if you have billions, I think the disconnect here is that you have masters of the world, but the internet world, okay? But they tend to forget that they belong to a country called America. So regardless of their worldly power, they are, one, new money, two, Jewish, three, they are into a market, something called the internet, that the old money people don't understand. And, are you following me here? Like,
I didn't follow some of that. I didn't follow some of it.
No, but the way I studied, I'm a double major. I'm political science and American studies. So American studies, I studied America, but not just history, like really how America was built and everything. And this whole old money, new money. Well, basically, okay, let's put it in simple terms. You could be Larry Page and Sergey Brin or Mark Zuckerberg or whatever. You don't have your nephew who is into the White House. You don't have your uncle who is in Senate and who is in Senate for the past 3 generations. You don't have that network. You don't have that old money network. And that if you watch carefully, these 4 companies, they know exactly what they're doing in regards to this old money power, because they don't go near their territories. Transportation, energy, all this kind of stuff. They fake to do it. The driverless car or the windmills or whatever. So that let them behave until today, until the day where they say, okay, now we are starting to understand that these guys, we don't understand how they did it. We don't even understand how it works. But all we know is that they got a lot more power than we think, and we will show them who is the boss here. in my opinion, that's what happened, and especially with the new president, Donald Trump, who accelerated this. Who because he's the president and he can push some. I mean, he can push politics in certain ways. Even if we say he's not doing much, he can definitely say, "Okay, guys, why don't we go after those tech companies?"
Yeah, well, he did. I mean, he did put an order out for that. I do think there is legitimate concerns of antitrust with the tech companies. That's been for a long time before Donald Trump. So, I mean, Google has been more and more, like when they took over travel, when they took over the IATA, is that how you say it? IATA? The source for travel.
Oh yeah.
When they stopped being, there was a point where Google was just a search engine who sold ads and then had other interests like green tech. And then they started crossing over into owning part of their own search results. And I think that's when the first antitrust stuff started to come up. But also at that time, they had one of the largest lobby groups in the United States, so it never went anywhere. It would come up in the news for a little bit, and then it would go away. And then when you add Bezos is the Amazon charges, from people I know, and I haven't studied it, so I don't know that it's more accurate than what I heard on the congressional hearing and what I hear from people I know. But they are predatory. I know people that have had products where Amazon went in and created their product and then undersold them. So that is the point they had about like Amazon and was it Google too? But definitely Amazon. Yeah, it was Google too. When you own the system, the platform, and the product, and you're double dealing to yourself and then undercutting everyone on that platform, that's when you run into an issue. And I think that's probably correct. So I think there is a definite push from Trump not because of antitrust issues, as you heard from the Republican side. They hardly asked an antitrust question during the entire hearing. They're more concerned about how tech is victimizing right-wing media, which is just not happening. I've written an article about it, done research, and also like one of the examples they use, like Breitbart, has a graph in it that shows from, I guess, their SEO, and they didn't know what it meant, core update as their drop. They dropped on a core update. They weren't targeted. They weren't, pushed out. And when you do search for terms that the right wing uses, you find all those sites. They just don't use the same terminology. So they're not there. But some of them have been penalized for bad practices, bad ad practices, core update issues, other things. So, but the point being is that there are some definite real issues there with all of them. I think Amazon and Facebook are probably the most predatory. Google definitely, Apple somewhat. And so that does need to be reviewed. And I do think like Jayapal, the representative, she had a lot of great questions on that.
Loved her.
I loved her.
She was my favorite.
She knew what she was talking about. She didn't ask silly questions. Because the one problem I had with them not being prepared, and they have all the people in the world to get them prepared, right? They have staff and analysts and consultants and all that stuff, is that when they asked a question, like maybe to Zook, who tended, I think, answer the most dishonestly, even though technically honest, he could dance around the question because what they asked didn't specifically ask what they were trying to get at, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I don't remember the exact words, but, it's sort of like, he was able to relatively get around a question, even though the question, like about hate speech, when they were asking about hate speech, they don't know how it works on his platform or how he addresses it on the platform. So he could answer it in a way that made it sound like he's done a lot. And yet when I report a group that is a QAnon white supremacist group with pictures of Obama with the noose and all sorts of hate photographs against all sorts of people, it doesn't go against community standards by Facebook's terms. So out of all the things I've reported, maybe 20% get picked up and are against terms. And then the other stuff, and I'm talking clear hate speech. I'm not talking difference of views or things like that. I mean, hanging nooses of people hanging, things like that. And they don't remove them. Facebook doesn't remove them. So when he said that they're really aggressive and they're doing this great job on hate speech, I'm like, you're not. but he was able to answer the question in a way where he was telling the truth. But that's not what the representative was really asking, but they didn't realize they weren't asking the right question.
But you really think that they wanted rebuttals, like answers? I had a feeling that it was an accusation and they were asking for comment, but the CEOs played it badly because you can, okay, there's a technique in public relations where you can admit a little something wrong to hide a big something,
Which they do.
It has a name. You know what I mean? So instead of being offended and being on the defenses and going on what I call keynote mode and then say, oh, blah, blah, blah. No, admit that it's not exactly, you know what I mean? Do a little bit of mea culpa. It will go a long way. It would have gone a long way instead of I don't recall, or instead of straight up lying, because I can't believe that Zuck doesn't remember the exchange with when he was basically going on destroy mode. That's the exact quote for Snapchat and Instagram or whatever it was. I mean, we all know that we all know that Zuckerberg is either he's going to buy you or he's going to kill you by copying all your features. If you don't want to sell, it will destroy you one way or another, with money or with features. So you better take the money. And I remember watching on the App Store, Snapchat number 2, Instagram number 9, and month after month, weeks after weeks, and then hey, Snapchat, and Snapchat survived. Congrats, because that's not easy. So I took notes of the. What was interesting is that you have 4 very different companies, and I have a feeling that the CEOs had, especially Tim Cook and maybe Google's also, Pinchot, and actually all of them, maybe not Zuck, because he's not human, he's an alien anyway, so he doesn't care, he has no emotions. But the 3 others had a feeling, they felt like they weren't treated fairly because they genuinely tried to do everything for the consumer. They do their best, they build something. It's very hard to do what they did, okay? It's very, very, very hard to build Amazon, Facebook, Google, or Apple. It's something that only a handful of human beings on the planet are able to do. In the entire history of humanity, not so many people are able to go from 0 to 100. Okay, we are all, I know I'm a 0 to 30. On the scale, if 100 is Jeff Bezos or one of those guys, even Elon Musk is not a 100. I think he stops at 70 or something. And you have to put yourself on that scale. It's very rare to be 0 to 100.
Yeah, back in the day, before they all went IPO and before it became more important about making money, they were truly revolutionary. And I remember, because I coded and a lot of websites until 2016, that Amazon, back when Netscape was around, if you remember Netscape, like Amazon was doing you had to pass Netscape 1 code for Amazon when you were like Netscape was almost out of business, right? They kept everything very simple, so it worked in all devices before anybody talked about responsive or adaptive or that didn't exist. Mobile didn't exist at the time, but I had to do back then. People don't remember, if they're new to the internet, don't realize that every browser had its own little wonkiness. So when I recoded like the front end of superpages.com, it had to work in 130 browser platform combinations to almost pixel level perfect. So that's the kind of challenge you're against. And they kept their code so simple so that it would work in all the browsers and all platforms and all the different types of computers. And that made them very successful because everyone could access them. There were a lot of sites back in the day that only worked for internet, didn't work for Firefox, only worked for Netscape, didn't work for IE, whatever it was called at the time. point being is they were all very innovative, and then they went to the street, and now it's all about making money, and that's where I think they've kind of gone off the path. So like what you're saying, what they did was amazing and a challenge, and innovation was key. But as soon as a company in the United States goes IPO, then it's all about the bottom line. And then they start making it more and more aggressive, and they become more and more aggressive because they just have to keep making money. It's not about innovating anymore. It's just about making money. And so they get to the point where they cross lines in that attempt to make money. And I think all of them have. I think probably Apple's more in its labor practices and where it gets its labor from, I think, than in their actual, they're very walled off garden ecosystem, but they don't hide that. If I have a Mac, I know I'm going to have to buy dongles to fit anything to it. So, and I think one of the most non-transparent would be Facebook and Amazon about their predation practices and how they use data to better themselves, and how they use data from the consumers. Like, most people don't know, Facebook has one of the most sophisticated facial recognition systems in the world. Really? And they developed that. Yeah, I wrote a whole article about it. They developed that by when in the early days when you tag somebody.
Yes.
They didn't tell you when you were tagging someone, you were training their facial recognition system.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah. So they got sued over that. They got sued and they lost, right? So they've done a lot of things under the consumer's eyes and under the government's eyes, borderline on pretty invasive and aggressive, that borderline should have probably been regulated for it.
Apple did as well. I have more Apple stuff than any Apple store in my office. But Siri, they got caught. They were listening to everything people were saying, supposedly to improve the blah. Okay, they on the App Store is definitely shady. Okay, I took notes of, basically we have 4 very different companies using basically the same techniques, which is, number 1, acquisition of other companies. That's one way to grow.
Yeah, and that's common in America. I don't think that's anything particularly.
But that
except how they might do it.
Yes, because like we said with Zuck and the other ones also, if you can't try to buy the company while you are also copying the features. And that's what Facebook has been doing again and again and again. Yeah. If I can't buy you, I'm going to kill you. That is wrong. That's not the right way to conduct business. That's not good business. And that was the question about, how much is too much? How far is too far? When you are free to do whatever you want. And what I found not really genuine from Google CEO is when asked the question, or even Bezos, all of them, are you copying your competition? Are you? And they are, we're just studying market trends. We're trying to serve the consumer better. We're trying to improve. Yeah, sure. But when there are no more options left for the other ones, when it's a no-go. Definitely, it's too much.
I agree. And I think when they got on the point about double-click advertising in Google, they really hit some important things to think about on how having the platform and the advertising and also selling product and featuring their own properties, all that combined together creates an ecosystem where someone cannot get out of it.
That was I forgot who it was. It was Miss. Forgot which congresswoman brought it up, the double click issue in 2016.
I think it was Jayapal. I'm not sure, but I think so.
Yes, probably. And it was against she brought up the statement by Page and Brin from 2006. And Pinchar was already CEO. And again, it took her 3 or 4 attempts to get not even yes, I signed off on it. yes, you signed on, and you I mean, you changed your mind. You decided to merge the data. You decided that it was okay. Now it's coming back. She was saying more data equals more money. More user data equals more money, and you refused to agree with that statement. What do you think of that? More data equals more money.
Well, data is the new gold, right? I mean, every company now, startup company that has any sort of data play, that's one of the things that's put into their investment package. That's what I'm saying.
So what would have been a better answer to that
Well,
question or
see,
to that statement?
Google has a hard time because most people don't know or don't realize that back when Google Plus was launched, Google Plus was not a social network. It was an identity provider network. And identity providers was something that was global. It was global. The United States was one of the leaders. And the idea was we would get rid of passwords and we would all have an identity provider. And other companies were signing up to be certified for it, like Facebook and Twitter. But Google was actually one of the first government certified identity providers in the United States, along with, I believe it was Equifax and PayPal. And so the idea was that they would know everything about you. And then when you went to a website that needed like identity proof, they would offer the identity proof. But there was no laws governing what they could do with that data. So that's why everybody had to have a Google Plus account. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Everybody had to have one to sign in. Everyone had to have that was all part of that. And this is all well documented. I wrote articles about it. I have federal documents about it. This is not like conspiracy theory. Then Snowden happened. And soon after, Snowden released his documents about the data that they were collecting, just in general, the government through sorry, I'm having a brain foggy day. What was the name of that program? They were listening in on like the data that Google had and others had internally. They got inside their systems and they were listening in. Anyway. So soon after that, the funding for the program that Google was a part of disappeared. And within a year, Google Plus went away. So Google's been collecting massive data on users as part of an official government program up until only a few years ago when Google Plus died. So they have massive data. I don't know what they did with the data after that program died. I don't know if they were required to remove it or delete it or anything like that. But during that time when Google Plus was a big thing, that was because they were creating identity profiles on all users.
Well, it's maybe even today one of the biggest challenge from Google's perspective is to identify who is who and basically build a topical PageRank or topical.
Yeah, where because Google Plus knew who you were, because Google was becoming an identity provider, they knew your education, they knew like entities and entity associations, and that's all part of natural language processing. But during the Google Plus times, it was for a program called NSTIC, NSTIC, for the federal government. And that program was literally going to get rid of passwords. And they were working with a UK group. Funny, one of their meetings was at Google in the UK in the George Orwell room. And this is in their own documents. This isn't, like I said, none of this is conspiracy theory. I wrote about 6 articles on it. It's all well documented. I have video, government officials speaking on it. It was a big thing. It was a big, big thing that they weren't the only ones. Like I said, Facebook was gearing up to become one. The programs like driver's licenses, giving out some government checks to people that were, in programs. So it was actually a thing. But then Snowden happened. And I don't have proof that Snowden killed that program. But I'm pretty sure once people were aware, now suddenly, of all the data being collected on them, that they weren't going to be able to do what they wanted with it. Because the only protection in that program was the ULA that you signed. Which, not a single person reads. So
True. Yes, but even to this day, Google is not
still tracking all that. They're not. When that program went away, Google Plus went away, that went away. But now they're doing entities and they're trying to associate entities. Like I did Reba McEntire's website and very, very long time ago But if you look up my name in images, the first thing that comes up is Reba.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's my only association with Reba McEntire is I designed and developed their website like longer than I cared to mention ago. But Google has that entity association with me. So that's the
But
entity thing that's different.
but even long time ago, they had this it's kind of mind mapping thing where they would associate what was it called, the magic wheel or something like that. Do you remember?
Oh yeah, I talked about the magic wheel in one of my talks on Google's evolution of language processing. So that was for a brief time, yeah.
What was very scary in my case is that the magic wheel associated me with my wife, who back then she didn't have Facebook. I mean, she never. The only connection was Gmail. There was no other connection. No way. Not one trace of her on the web or on the internet.
I have to see when the magic wheel was, because if it was during the time of Google Plus, that would totally make sense.
Anyways, okay, let's go back to the four ways, because acquisition of other companies, the four of them are guilty of shady ways to acquire new companies. Shady ways. Again, where is the limit when you have no set of rules in how you can, especially in the startup world, especially when many of these companies want to be bought out by the big.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of companies just are formed. The idea of doing that.
So definitely not easy. Then number two is the pricing. Okay, that's especially for Amazon. The way they even go pricing is not even. I mean, it's just one detail. I don't know if it's still the case today, but since the beginning, you would since the beginning of the marketplace. Okay, you enter the marketplace, you register, and then you leave. Okay, you don't want to be on the Amazon marketplace. They were cyber squatting, meaning your account was still on, the page was still on. Of course, it was showing up different vendors, but that's not cool. I mean, I know that's totally a black hat technique.
I think one of the most. So when we were asking earlier, like how you rate different ones, right? I think if we're going on pure damage to the individual level in the United States, Amazon's probably the worst, I think, because Amazon preys on not just like big companies or buying companies or competitors, but just they call internal in that hearing we heard, they call them internal competitors, right? They call their clients, people using their platform, competitors. And then I do know people that had entire businesses undersold by Amazon copying their product, ordering it from maybe China somewhere cheaper, and then selling it underneath their pricing because they had access to the pricing. So I think they've hurt a lot of people that are mom and pop like. And I think that damage is worse, because if you have a company and Facebook starts making features and you decide whether to sell or not, you're still probably going to come out okay as long as you decide to sell, right? You're not necessarily, and you're one company. Whereas if Amazon's targeting its own platform users, I feel like if Facebook went after all its individual people that used its platform, and so I think it's more widespread. But because those people don't have any social power, they don't get heard. Because I know a lot of people that have talked about this at conferences and people I know in person, seen it online. I'm not an Amazon expert, so there could be reasons I don't know for it happening, but from what I understand, they're very predatory towards the mom and pop person who doesn't have the room to have someone come in and undercut their whole business because they can go buy the product in China and they have all the data on how it's sold.
In my opinion, if you are not producing, if you are just a reseller with a 10-12% margin average, not only Amazon, all the marketplaces, you will not make any money. You might sell some stuff, you might generate some income, but no. Well, hold on.
I'm talking about
Revenue.
people.
What is the when you just bring in the money and compared to what's left over? Is it income, revenue? What's revenue and income? Which one is it?
Revenue is what you make off of your, well,
At the end of the day, in your what's left in your pocket, what is that?
income is usually individual.
Okay.
Revenue is usually
Oh,
company.
okay, got it. But so company revenue, that's the global money that's coming in, and then after everything you paid, what's left? How do you call that?
Income? No, you're talking about net and gross.
Net and growth. Okay.
Yeah.
So your
gross being
net income.
net being what's left over. Yeah.
If you play the marketplace game with a 10% margin, it's not possible.
That's not what I mean. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that, and they talked about it in the hearings. And I'll just use my mom as an example because I know her business, and it didn't happen to her, but it could have happened to her. She sold belt buckles online. Nobody sells belt buckles anymore, so she did really well. She's making 55, 60,000 a year on belt buckle sales online. She was also had severe COPD and was on oxygen, and it was the only way she could make money. But she made good money doing that, right? Now, let's say Amazon decides that they want to sell belt buckles because they know from their data that she's doing a really good, like she's selling a lot. She's selling $1 million worth, and she wasn't, but let's say she was. And they'd like to get into that market because they have the internal data on how that sells and who's selling on their platform and how much they're charging and what the revenues are. And they come in and they go get her belt buckle styles and they go to China and get them all made, and then they sell them for 50% less because they can. Right? Because the margin on belt buckles is actually about $6 to $10 per buckle on a regular belt buckle. So that's the kind of thing I was hearing from people. So someone here in my area, they sell supplies for people who are into like prepping or just disaster relief, that kind of thing. And they had a whole line of products that they had been selling for years that they white labeled under their name, but they weren't getting like this wasn't like an affiliate marketer, right? This was someone who had their hands in developing that line. And one day he woke up and Amazon undercut his product completely by like 30%. And he's like, I can't go 30% lower. And so he lost all that revenue. So I do know that that's happened in Amazon. And that's where I think that the representative, I think it was Japal, but it could be somebody else, where they were saying when you own the platform, the data, and then you make your people using your platform your competitors, that's where it's a problem. And I do tend to agree there.
Yes, it was a black gentleman. I forgot who he was. He brought AWS as well. AWS because that's even another whole big thing where you have Amazon doing Amazon TV thing. What's it called? Forgotten the name of it. Well, it's Amazon Prime movie or whatever it's called, okay, or Amazon Music, and you're hosting Hulu or Netflix on your servers. So your straight up competition is there on your servers, and you know as well as I do that the ones who own the servers, unless it's something like the CIA or that kind of entity, you can pretty much see whatever is going on the server. Do they? We don't know. If there's there are no proofs, it's only speculations. But they can. Do they? They say they don't. Apparently, Congress has had numerous witnesses, numerous people, ex-employees, telling them that within the marketplace and within AWS, Amazon was indeed studying the internal competition, like it's called. And yes, that's also not good. That's they call it following market trends, but at that level, It's not just following market trends. It's having an advantage that.
And this is why I'm sorry to interrupt. Sorry. Go ahead. As I say, this is why knowing how to ask the questions made a big difference. Because Google said following, or who said market trends? That was Amazon, right? They were following market trends. Well, if you understood at the process level what's going on there, you would have asked a follow-up question like, what do you mean market trends? That is such a BS buzzword speak answer, right? Do any of us say I'm following market trends? I follow Google trends, or we might follow data that we get from our Google Analytics or from a software like SimilarWeb or something like that. But we don't just go, oh, we're following market trends. Our whole business is on market trends, you know. So
all of them, even the ladies, even the very good one, they had a piece of paper with the accusation. They could more or less read that, and you're right, they could not go beyond what was on that piece of paper. There was definitely a big problem, but still, when I got a little bit disappointed, it was I think it was Jennifer, who I really like and really appreciate. But that tweet, I mean, that old guy, 42 years in Congress, Twitter, Facebook.
Which one? Censor? I can never say
the oldest of them all, with the white hair and the glasses, and
I have to Sensenbrenner.
He said something that happened on Twitter, and he confused Twitter and Facebook. Well, regardless, because even if it happened on Twitter, it was talked about on Facebook. So it was not a mistake. It was only a half mistake.
He was asking why they took down. I have the article.
Yes, the Trump
Jr.'s video on hydroxychloroquine.
Okay. So that was an easy win for Zuck, but really, is that the summary of what the hearing was about? You know, what was it? Was it worth it to tweet it that, okay, this was the summary, this represents this meme, this...
for their, and anyone listening is going to be like, oh, it's just because I don't like Trump, and it's not. This is just an honest evaluation of it, and that is, sadly, most of the Republicans weren't there for the antitrust hearing.
No. It was about the fact. It was about the fact that this old dude thought it was on Facebook when it was on Twitter.
Because it didn't matter. It wasn't about antitrust, was it? It was, why'd you take, the literal question was, why did you take down Donald Trump Jr.'s video on the drug, right? That has nothing to do with antitrust. Nothing at all. This wasn't a hearing on, are the Republicans being targeted by big tech, which they're not. But they wanted sound bites for they're all, a lot of them are up for election this year. So they want sound bites for their ads and things. They're in Congress being tough on big tech, coming down on the victims of big tech. Here's the deal, okay? Like, I really think I've thought about writing a Medium article to all this. The guy with the emails that go into spam folder, welcome to digital marketing. If you're an email marketer, that happens to you every day, 1,000 times a day, that things go into spam folders and you figure out why and you try to get them out of the spam folders, but nobody targeted his campaign for that. He had a bad email marketer or a bad email list or someone who didn't know what they were doing.
And it burned his email, yeah.
Yeah, and then when you talk about the conservative websites being not found in Google, well, that's not true. He's like, well, they just found them like right before this hearing 2 days ago. Or no, it was a week before. When there was a Google update. One of the sites that probably got hit by a core update, and the next Google update, it came back. Oh, yeah, we deal with that every day, right? Every day, that's what I do. I recover sites from Google updates. So they had all these questions about their victimization that are just what every digital marketer deals with every day, dealing with these companies. Nothing to do with targeting anybody, but how these companies run their algorithms. That is very different than the Democrat side, where like Jay Paul's comment on like Google and digital advertising was, it's running the marketplace, it's acting on the buy side, it's acting on the sell side, and at the same time, which is a major conflict of interest. It allows you to set rates very low as a buyer of ad space for newspapers, depriving them of ad revenue, and then also to sell Hi to small businesses that are very dependent on advertising on your platform. It sounds a bit like a stock market, except unlike a stock market, there's no regulation on your ad exchange or market. She equated it to insider trading. She was actually talking about what the hearing was about. Now, whether you agree or not agree that's an antitrust issue, she was asking about antitrust. But Sensenbrenner, Jordan, Gates were all talking about, and I forget the other Republican with his email, but they're all just talking about things that happen because algorithms don't always work perfectly, or they do work
True.
well, and you just have a sucky person who is a digital marketer.
I
So
totally agree
there's two different hearings there.
on this bad aspect of the hearing. That was ugly.
Yeah.
Um,
There was a lot of it. It's not like it was a few minutes
but
of it.
if okay, again from an outsider perspective, I could care less about Trump and I could care less about Biden. It's your president, okay? Like I say, you have the politicians you deserve. But the 2016 election problem issue, and right before this live, okay, I did the research and I read the New York Times article and the Fox Business News article about the Latino votes. Okay, that email from Google, from that internal email, and you're like reading two different stories again. It's like the New York Times trying to legitimate that. Regardless of if Google influenced the Latino vote or not, it would have increased by that much, blah blah. By demographic, they made, and then you read the Fox Business, and of course there is the email, and there's a blank statement from that lady saying we'll use the features to increase Latino votes. So again,
Yeah, but the only ones claiming that were right wing propaganda sites. So.
no, that's where I disagree with you. I don't like journalists. I've manipulated them so much since 1994. I feel bad for real journalists. I think they are very lonely because I don't think Fox is worse than CNN. I think they're the same.
It was specifically. We shouldn't get in this debate because Fox does actually. I don't watch CNN, but Fox literally was invented to prevent another Nixon from happening. That's why he invented Fox. And
they all lie. They all
they
lie.
make up a lot of stuff.
They all do.
No, others may have like perspectives. They don't lie. Like
Yeah, they do. No, they do. Journalists are not the way they used to be. Now they are bloggers or editorialists, meaning before a journalist would just relate the facts, okay? Would just say the story like it is. Now, according to the agenda, and very often it's lying by not saying something very often, or manipulate. I have this whole. Anyway, it's a different debate. It's not the issue here about the press, but journalists and politicians are on my top list of people that you can trust. And I don't care which side are they on. They're all the same to me. I don't think a liberal paper or TV is lying less than the other side. I don't think that's true. But
we're going to strongly disagree there.
We agree to disagree, but
there is no equivalent of the Gateway Pundit or the Washington Times or the Washington Examiner or any of those on the left. There just isn't.
What about the
or InfoWars or QAnon? Or,
really? What do you remember? Do you remember the name of that lady working for the New York Times, who basically by herself provoked the Iraq War? She was on the New York Times.
Yeah, you'd have to find me an article on that. That's not a systematic. That's not a systematic implementation. There's a systematic implementation of propaganda on right-wing media sites, and I'm not talking about real news. I'm talking about right-wing media sites. Washington Times, Washington Examiner. Washington Times is run by a cult called the Moonies.
Washington Times, I don't even know that paper.
Yeah,
I know the Post. I don't know the Times.
that's part of the right-wing media network. There's a huge media network, so it's not the same. You can't say it's equal on both sides. It's just not.
I'm not saying they're the same. I'm saying they both lie. They both hide the truth. They both have an agenda, and they're both telling one side of the story.
I totally disagree. There are real legitimate journalists out there who do not lie and who legitimately do research.
Not so many left. That's the problem.
There is a problem. Killed a lot of news, yes, because of the expense. I agree with that.
I'm not saying all of them. I'm saying the very few talented journalists who try to do a real job must be very lonely.
Journalists that try to put out the truth, they just usually get fired. Like Shepard Smith and, Chris Wallace will probably not be long for this world because he's been very truthful the last couple months. So there is just a difference. And it was and they did create Fox so there would never be another Nixon impeachment.
No, I mean, the Fox system, I read Roger Ailes' book. I've studied him before the scandal, so I know very well how he constructed this show because he came from Broadway shows. Okay, this is what it is. Fox News, Fox is a Broadway show for the right, for the Republicans then, and the right Republicans, not the middle. That we definitely agree on. But now, if we go back to the topic of the hearing, what's called the copycat behavior. Okay?
Yeah.
These four different companies apply this technique of, and all of them, even the good ones, like the Apple, for example, is a very big copycat behavior, predatory behavior type of company when it comes to apps that become part of the OS 10 system.
That's true.
And sure, they're integrated better. Sure, it's better for the user at the end of the day. And you're right again when they came not well prepared enough with the example of the watch time or the sleep apps.
Yeah, the sleep app. For those who don't know, it was about an app. What was it that monitors your?
Yeah, the sleep time or for the kids or whatever it is. But it was there was a security issue with these apps. I forgot what it was.
Yeah, and that's why it became a bad example. Because at first I was listening, and I was like, "Oh, that does sound really bad." And they're like, "Well, there were security issues with those apps." And then they let the apps come back into the store once they fixed the security issues. And she's like, "But then your app took over." And I'm like, From our side of the aisle, I could see it being like this, the conversation. These apps all have huge security issues, but they're really popular. Let's make one internally. We'll put that up while they fix their security issues, and then we'll let them back in. So it's too easy to make another side to that argument as being predatory. I'm not saying they haven't been predatory in other places, but that was just a really bad example of predation.
And you're right about not being prepared because it's a bad example and you don't have a backup plan. You don't have, I mean, she didn't have another example.
Yeah, she had a second example. It was like she had one example.
And that's wrong. That's not the way to do it. It feels like, it doesn't feel like because I know more about the EU and it's such a disaster the way it's run over there in Belgium, and because I have some family friends working there, and I totally can imagine how the so-called experts were recruited, what they did, how much they charge, and at the end of the day, how the Congress women or men ended up with some documents and then some summary of documents, and then prepare by talking to people. So that's why also they had those case studies that were good. It's good to show an example, but the example needs to illustrate the bigger picture. And that's what was missing, is the big picture behind those examples. Diapers.com is just an example. of a system, and we were missing this whole system that they put in place. So by controlling distribution and surveying competition, and by the fact that the market shares are so humongous, and sometimes I thought it was not fair the way, for example, let's take a very specific example. When Jeff Bezos in his preliminary statement says that Amazon only represents 4% of retail, come on,
Yeah,
dude.
where did that come from? He must have been all retail in the world.
Yeah, that's it. But all kind of retail, okay, like gas station and stuff like. No. Let's and he said no, but I don't think e-commerce is a market. I think it's just a distribution channel. Yes, dude. But when you dominate that,
I mean, those kind of answers.
if
By the way,
it's regardless if it's 40 or 70% of that market or that distribution channel, that becomes a problem.
So the actual in 2018 they represented 49% of e-commerce sales, 5% of all retail in the entire country, but they're 49% of online sales. So
it's tremendous.
Yeah.
Half.
I'm looking right now. I looked it up while we were talking. Just to know.
It's a big part of the pie, and with that part of the market share comes responsibilities that they, like you said in the introduction, IPO, and now it's just needs to be like this, a slope uphill for investors on the quarterly frequency is very, it goes fast, 3 months. Every 3 months, you have to do a big show, a big report to the investors.
Yes.
That's also the problem because you make short-term decisions for growth that will impact the long-term vision. Even the people in place outside of those companies, any big publicly traded companies, all the people in charge, all the CEOs are making short-term decisions because the exit strategy, because of the quarterly reports, because they don't care about what will happen in 10 or 15 years.
Well, and that's what I meant when I said as soon as a company goes IPO, they stop innovating because innovation requires risk, requires long-term planning, requires that sometimes you don't make money, right, while you're investing in the innovations. So in the American stock market, and I am not an expert in this area, I just know that someone explained to me that in the 90s, and I don't know when the law changed or the rule changed, you had companies could not make money for on Wall Street for a quarter, 2 quarters, a year. It didn't matter. It wasn't a requirement. But apparently now there's a fiduciary requirement to make money. So there's like they have to focus on making money or they're in violation of some regulations of some sort. And I don't know the details of them. So so it explains this like push, but it's not good because not only does it hurt the market and the economy overall because nobody's innovating, but at the same time it hurts the companies, so they get so big and nobody challenges them, but they're not challenging them because they don't have severe deficiencies in their products. I mean, Google search at this point is so much irrelevance that comes back, but they don't have a competitor, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Facebook's putting out a design change that everybody I know can't stand. Doesn't matter, they don't have a competitor. New Twitter, when that came out, I was in 3 test groups. The comments went on for days about how much people, I don't mean disliked it, I mean like would set it on fire if they could.
Yes.
And Twitter ignores it. Why? Because they have no competitors. So it hurts them overall because eventually there's a tsunami effect, I call it in business, where you build up so much bad blood underneath the wave that it rolls out one day and it crashes and it looks like, oh my God, there was a sudden downturn in this company. No, it wasn't. You've been accumulating the debt for years. And now you either have a competitor or regulation, something comes in that's powerful enough to challenge you. And then you can't react. You can't adapt because you haven't had to adapt in since you went into being a big big Wall Street brand. So,
Twitter got lucky. Remember how Dig got slashed with the redesign and everybody left? Dig.com didn't survive a redesign.
but you had places to go back then.
Yeah.
You don't have nowhere to go. Now, on the one positive on Twitter, and I was surprised they weren't at the hearing, but for years, Jack didn't care about anything. And I know a big investor came in and threatened to remove him, and maybe that's what woke him up or something. But they have really actively been trying to get rid of bots, on starting to get rid of problems on their network, the propaganda that's driven on their network. So I have to at least give them kudos for starting to take a turn towards the, I don't know what the right word is. I don't want to say moral because that's so interpretive, but doing the right thing as opposed to just letting things fly. Whereas on Facebook, I mean, they're still, they don't seem to care. So I think I have to give Twitter at least the kudos for that.
Why do you think a company like Microsoft was not invited to the table, or Twitter?
I don't know that Twitter was or wasn't. I hadn't looked that up yet, so I'll probably do that when we're talking. The Microsoft, I don't know. Microsoft isn't really, they do their thing, but are they really? Have they really made a play in recent years? Not really. They are starting to, I think. And,
yeah, you're right. They're struggling all over the place so much that maybe.
I don't know that they're struggling though, because I know that they have a solid hold on a lot of markets, government, things like that. So I think they can make their money, but they're just not playing in the space that Google and them are at this time. I think they're making plays that way because they've restructured. They didn't care about search for years. They didn't care about Bing, but now they've restructured their teams. They're putting more effort, sending people to conferences to talk to SEOs, to get ideas. They come to dinners with us, things like that, something Google barely does anymore and used to do all the time. I also know that they're making all of their products, everything that they have, accessible for people with disabilities. 17 different product lines are being fixed for that. So they are making plays. They're just quiet. They're kind of quiet about it, and nobody really notices them right now. And they're not back in their early days, they were super aggressive and they did super horrible things. And but they're not that company anymore. And I don't think they feel the need to play in that space maybe right now.
You're right.
More broad than they are, like a Google or a Facebook is.
But by the way,
they're buying TikTok though. I think that's going through today. TikTok. So they are making a play. Just don't know what it is.
Yes. Well, if it's the only play, did you follow the Mixer fell?
The Mixer fell?
Mixer. They tried to build a competitor to Twitch, the gaming platform. And the former Apple fanboy, I would say, I'm not at all. I think I quit liking Apple after Steve Jobs died, actually. I really liked the Windows Phone. I think it was really cool. It was a Nokia something.
I loved it. They loved their Windows Phone.
But you're right. The other thing, Microsoft was probably not relevant on that hearing. But why did they call Alphabet Google?
They probably don't know the difference.
I was like, okay, Google is just...
Like one of the guys said, why doesn't my pictures on my wall show up on my Facebook? Like, did you mean your wall at home? I'm not sure. What are you talking about?
Yeah, because... It's not Google, it's Alphabet.
Yeah. I just don't think they know the difference.
Something else I noticed is the fact, especially from Google CEO, playing the card of we are giving a chance to everyone. We are bringing out opportunities for everyone, and nobody denies that. We spoke about it at the beginning, but let's go back to it for a second, because I felt like the CEOs were all hiding behind this feeling of unfair treatment because they did so much good. And everybody acknowledges that, even the Congress people who are customers and using all those tools. But do you think they are so much out of touch from reality because now they are on some stratospheric level where they don't even realize that they went too far? I had this kind of impression. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure about this feeling of being out of touch with reality, and by genuinely not realizing that they were wrong about this kind of except Zuck. Zuck is a gangster. That's different.
I don't know if I give him that much credit. Maybe a gangster wannabe. Anyway, yeah, I think you're right. I think they're probably out of touch. I also think that they know their pressures to make money and are trying to defend doing that, right? Like, none of them are without understanding of what happens on their platforms. CEOs, they know what goes on. I'm sure that Amazon and Facebook's aggressive policies are run from the top. I don't know if Google's are. I don't know if, because we know like search and advertising are completely separate. Like even in the buildings, they don't go inside each other's buildings, and that was smart of them to prevent antitrust issues, right? Because if they separate them, then they can't be accused of favoring, and then they may cross the line. That I think it's partly out of touch. I think it's partly trying to explain their own capitalistic nature
Or
in a way that defends it.
They really don't believe that they're wrong. They genuinely don't believe that they're treated fairly. It makes me think. But look, how can you be so out of touch? Let's take Jeff Bezos. Question is, Mr. Bezos, do you know that counterfeit goods are sold on Amazon? And Bezos' answers is, in my knowledge, no. And then after 3 or 4...
all these programs to prevent it.
Okay, $200 million the sale of counterfeit goods. And you're like, in my knowledge, no. But with 1.4 million sellers, they probably are. Come on, Jeff. You do know that counterfeit goods are sold on Amazon.
Yeah, and that's where I'd have to go back and look at the question, because they are under oath, and if they're under oath and they lie, that's a criminal charge. So I'd have to see the question and how he could answer that way and get away with it, because I don't remember the question, how it was phrased. But you're right. Obviously, he knows there's counterfeit. I have ethical issues with Amazon, so I don't purchase much from them. But also, in the past, when I did, I don't know what's real and what's counterfeit. So I stopped buying, because I was like, one time just looking up toothbrush heads for my Sonic toothbrush. And I was like, oh, these look good. And I look at the 1-star reviews and like, must be made in, some other country. This is counterfeit. They broke after 30 days, blah, 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 blah. And I look at every product's 1-star reviews, and half of them would have those comments. And I'm like, I don't trust anything I get from their marketplace. I don't buy anything because I don't trust them. I don't trust they're not counterfeit BS product I'm going to buy, and it's going to have the right packaging because it was made somewhere where they could get the packaging and put bad products in it. So outside my ethical reasons for not wanting to give them a lot of money. But yeah, you're right. He obviously knows about it, and he obviously was not truthful, but did he lie? Depends on how the question was phrased.
You can diffuse. You can say,
Exactly.
I don't know if the fifth or whatever you can call.
Prosecution, so there's no fifth.
Bezos really seems to know what's going on in his company. Not for the Twitch, the DMCA question on Twitch. I genuinely believe that he doesn't know what's going on Twitch because there's a big problem. I mean, those streamers, they play YouTube or they play Spotify, and they just watch or listen. It's not fair use, they're streaming their content. But the problem on Twitch is that now the big companies, big record companies, started DMCA. But what about the little ones? What about everyone?
Yeah.
So they need to. There's a big. Bezos has a big problem with Twitch. He has to get his nose into Twitch because it's not doing well on all levels. Oh,
I think when we talk about them though, like I think part of the outcome of the hearing will be based on who's harmed, how are people harmed, right? I think Apple's probably, don't get me wrong, all of them have some guilt on some level, some antitrust issues, some predation issues. I think Apple's probably one of the least. Now, if you want to look in their labor issues, that's a whole different story. But and their use of China for labor, that's a different thing. But as far as their platform goes, I think they probably have the least amount of issues. I think Google is next, just because although Google does have DoubleClick and Google has ads, it does have organic. So they can at least modify. And plus, there's Bing, and plus there's DuckDuckGo, and they all have a bit of the market share. So the damage to like some news publications I know right now who like are getting lots of traffic, but their money for their ads went way down because Google is setting those prices. Like Representative, I keep trying to say her name and I can't say it right. Jayapal said, is a problem for specific people like that. Then you get into like Amazon and the fact that they predate against their own platform users. The millions of people selling products and they get these ads on TV and they're like, most of our people are mom and pop. And it's like, yeah, mom and pop can lose their business tomorrow because Amazon decides to undercut them with something that they're going to sell as a knockoff product. Then you get into me for Facebook. And I think Facebook is worse out of all of them for the harm issue because Facebook filter bubbles people, for one, with all their stuff. Follows them across the web, even if they're not signed in to Facebook. You don't even have to have an account with Facebook, and they follow you for their data. And boy, did you love it as a social media advertiser, marketer, to be able to target people for $50 that lived in this zip code, that made this amount of money, that read this article. But that's, a lot of information to have on people. And then if you add to that, they allowed people with very bad intent to use their platform and did nothing to try to stop it, and still have done very little to try to stop it because it makes them money. I think they're probably the most harmful because they allow that data to be used to, and I don't just mean for politics. I mean for hate, for white supremacy groups. I think they had 70,000 groups that were like white supremacy and QAnon and all that kind of stuff. So they allow their platform to be used for great damage, and they allow people to target people with the advertising that they sell with the data from those people that they're harming.
True.
So I think if we go down the levels of harm, that's the levels of harm. But you may have a totally different opinion.
No, I see the ranking I did previously was on the impression those CEOs.
Totally. I'm just talking about the
but as far as harm, the negative level or the I don't know how we could call it. I tend to agree with you because Google will kill. How could I call them? Scrappers or type of industries one by one who are like we did, like most of our clients. They grab a little bit of something, they find a niche, and then it's gone because Google is going to provide a direct answer. And markets by market, niche by niche, it's all going away. But I don't think that's so harmful because first, it's useful for the user. Okay, if I want to see the weather, if I want to know the weather or see the result of an election of a game or whatever it is, please. I don't need to click on different sites to have the answer. That's good, but yes, it's sad for the people I know who had to adapt or die because that's the law of digital marketing, and that's the rule we live by. So if you are into that business, you can't complain that it's gone because Google killed it. You knew that you were grabbing a little bit of something. It would last the time that it would last. And if you complain about it, well, you don't deserve to be in that game. And we've been there long enough to know that that's the only rule. Okay, there's no going back. Okay, maybe it's not fair, but that's the way it is, and you have to deal with it, adapt or die. That's it. That's our world. But now, the level arm of Amazon with the marketplace, because maybe I'm one of the lucky few in the world who can't buy on Amazon's marketplace. They won't deliver to where I live. I live in a small country, Andorra, that doesn't exist on the map. And for Amazon, I can only buy from what Amazon is selling. So I do see, like, first of all, I see that I can buy a lot of things, so many things. Yeah, I can buy books, I can buy HDMI cables, I can buy, but all the funky things that you guys can buy, no, I can't. I don't have access to that. So there is, I think, two different Amazons here. There is the Amazon, the bookstore, let's call it that.
Yeah.
And the marketplace. The marketplace is evil, but I think the concept of marketplace in general is just a bad concept. It was a good idea, but the execution of it is taking advantage of people, and it's just not working properly.
I guess the promise of the internet in the early days, one of the reasons I liked being a part of it was anybody could be anything online, right? You could go and put a blog up and you could sell a product, or you could make a whole new life for yourself, by being online, that you couldn't do with a brick and mortar store without a lot of money and investment. And it gave a very easy way for people to try to make a life for themselves. For my mom with her COPD and being on oxygen, to make $55,000 a year from selling belt buckles, because we used to have a country store and we sold belt buckles, and that's the one thing she took and moved it online. So they had that promise, but over the years, because of like marketplaces like Amazon, they still sell that idea of that promise, but they don't really offer it. And in a lot of cases, we're finding that they take it away. So, and even on Google, like I would even say that, let's say the time weather thing, when Google first put up like the first answer box with the time, there was a site below it. It was Time and Weather, I think was the name of it. It got 2 million visits a month.
True.
Well, I'm looking at my computer right now, right? I can see the time in the upper right. I can see the time on my phone. I can see the time anywhere, right? I can look at it. So why were people going to the time and weather site? They weren't going for the time, but they were finding other things. And I think the problem with all these walled gardens is we've destroyed the ability for the internet to be what it originally was, which is a place to discover new things, get outside your bubble, find new products, like there was an adventure. Remember the early days of the internet? There was like an adventure. Like, look at this site I found. Oh my God, can you believe this thing? You don't do that anymore because everything's been so walled off and so dominated by these products. And so like Amazon's marketplace, I can find all those products elsewhere from buyers or sellers, and they may be big brands too, but at least I know it's coming directly from that seller and it's not a counterfeit. So that's what I do. And then you get into the whole issues of how Amazon treats employees and stuff like that. But that's another thing. But it's like we used to have this very democratic, not politically, but place where anybody of any race, age, income level, country, whatever, unless maybe not countries, because some countries didn't allow the internet, but you could make anything you wanted online. You could be who you wanted online, and they've kind of destroyed that and their dominance. I think that's the overall.
But it was an argument for all of them, saying that they provided that, and to some extent, you're right. At the beginning, they did, yeah. But now, especially for e-commerce, it's a disaster. Like really.
49%. I mean, you and I work in this space, so we understand how big that is. But someone who doesn't work in the space might understand. That's like owning 49% of all the retail stores in America. I mean, they do that kind of business.
Humongous.
Yeah.
Humongous.
Yeah. Can you imagine, like, if there was a Walmart, literally the only store you could go to was Walmart. And they're like, but we have a big marketplace of goods. And you're like, yeah, but there's no other store but Walmart. I can find like 50% of the stores in my city are Walmarts. Right now, I know they have a lot, but they're more like maybe 5%, not 50%. So that's basically what Amazon's saying. It's like, well, we have a platform and a marketplace, and like we're a massive Walmart, but we take up 50% of all the real estate that you're gonna see.
So now let's end up to imagine what will happen. What do you think? Is it?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Where is he going to go?
The rumors I've heard, but I haven't had a chance to look into it because there's been so much news this past week, and I was sick too. But is that the ones are looking at hardest are Amazon and Google. Now, Facebook has a lot of dinners with the Trump administration, so that might be why Facebook plus Peter Thiel is in that situation. So maybe that's why they're not getting a hard look, but apparently those are the two that might get the most hard hit. Now, the fortunate thing for Google, go ahead.
Well, just on Facebook, I think maybe they will take away a couple of his toys. We're saying, okay, Instagram, you gotta get rid of Instagram. You gotta get rid of WhatsApp. That's what I think about Facebook. We will go one by one. Okay, each give our point of view, but they won't. They can destroy Facebook as it is, and if Zuckerberg was just left with Facebook alone, and you took away all the other properties, he would still be fine. he would be frustrated because you took away a lot of his toys, but still. Facebook alone, without the rest, is still a big chunk of money.
The truth is, people on Instagram would be probably much happier to go back to a pure Instagram than a Facebook run one. Instagram users are very purist in Instagram. Yeah. With Facebook, I think as long as Trump is president, I don't think anything's really going to happen. Like I said, there's a lot of private dinners with Zuck and Trump, and Peter Thiel is known for his alt-right activities. So he's in with all that stuff. So I don't know that they'll do anything with Facebook, although that's really a problem because Facebook really on the cultural side of America has done a lot of destruction with the hate and the promotion of propaganda and conspiracies and all that.
That was not brought up. This what we call the filter bubble, and the way how can I express it? Very quickly, you are driven into that tunnel, that funnel, and you can't get out. You don't have any alternatives. You don't see the other voice, and there's even the La pensée unique. I think Diderot or some philosopher, French philosopher from back in the days. There's this unique train of thought. So even back then, it was the beginning, the first encyclopedia, and so on, and they were.
And Google started the filter bubble, but Facebook took it to like a whole new level. I mean, even your friends, my poor friends, they'll like post like, well, I don't hear about an event or something, and they're like, well, I posted it, and I'm like, did you tag me in it? They're like, well, no, and I said, well, only 8% of the people that follow you ever see anything that you post. So it's that much of a bubble, right? It's like my friend here in town and I never would talk on Facebook because she and I saw each other all the time. So Facebook didn't think we needed to see each other's stuff. So I would never see unless I went to her page. And that's how specific their bubble is. It's a very definite bubble. But like I said, the early days, the beauty of the internet was it exposed you to all sorts of new things. Like I read the Quran for the first time. Before the internet had a graphic interface, like on a black screen with the text broken.
That's
like
cool.
This. Yeah, right. I was in college. I'm like, what is this? Oh, I've heard of the Quran. Oh, it's right in front of me. I'll read it here, right? But they took all that away. But they've taken that all away in the e-commerce space too. And nobody cares about if you filter bubble ideas. Unfortunately, they do care if you filter bubble commerce.
True. The other issue with Facebook is that you really if you have human beings, you have people, and I focus on Zuckerberg because that individual puzzles me, and I don't like Facebook because I don't like Zuckerberg. It's as simple as that. I think Instagram is a decent app. I enjoy it, but no, Facebook. I just have no trust in what he's doing with what's the end game there, and the way it went way beyond. You spoke about it. You didn't mention it, that the pixel, okay, the Facebook pixel, before the Cambridge Analytica thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I got disgusted by how far we could retarget and follow people all over the place. That was insane. Because that was so undervalued. That was Facebook ads was so cheap compared to Google AdWords.
Yeah, and they're great for mom and pops. Great for them, but still, you're right. I targeted once in Vegas. There was a company coming to do a show at a convention, and they didn't have enough people to sign up for their booth. So I targeted while people were at the convention, the 1 block radius around the hotel and the airport for the type of persona they wanted, and got them their signups within like 3 days before the show. So the targeting could be used for really good things. Like I had a mom and pop outfitter who did like river raft tours and all that sort of stuff. And on Monday every week, I would run a very targeted ad, and they would have all their boats filled by Saturday. But that same advertising possibility obviously was used for very, very nefarious purposes, probably way more often than it was used to fill riverboats for a mom and pop in Maryland. So,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's move to the next one. We'll save Google for the last. So let's go easy one. Apple. Okay, Apple. What is wrong with Apple in your opinion?
Outside labor practices, because I know there's a lot of issue with their Chinese labor. And that's another thing, another conversation. Actually, I don't. They're walled garden, but it's not like when you buy an Apple product, you don't know you're getting a walled garden. You know, I have a Mac computer because I just, for my laptop needs, it's better than having to use a PC. I'm not a Mac fan person or Apple fan person. I have an Android phone. So, so I think that they have similar issues, but it's just that most of it's not hidden in the shadows under like a shh, don't talk about it. Some predatory issues with the apps, as you said, but can't really think. And maybe I'm just had so much of that hearing in my head. I don't remember something from Apple being particularly horrible, but I don't remember.
You have issues with the Genius Bar, the way you have a simple issue with your computer, especially laptops, and they will make you change everything while it was just one cable disconnected. So
well, unfortunately that's how they're built. Yes, like I had to. My keyboard broke 3 times on my last one, and I had to get the entire top case, which is a $500 job, fixed. Fortunately, because it was a defect, they kept repairing it without charging me, but still.
Well, there's this one guy on YouTube who that's his fight, trying to prove that Apple. So he's showing all this nonsense about how the Genius bars are run, but they, like you said, they're guilty. I think of just the way publicly traded company needs to make more money and more money and more money and more money.
Like, let's get rid of the audio jack and give you a dongle. Like, because we made it this much thinner, and everyone's like, I didn't care. But now they've sold their dongle market. I think is like one of their biggest or the biggest revenue stream that they have is their dongle market. And that was brilliant. Let's just make it so you have to buy dongles.
And
But they don't hide that. I mean, it sucks, but they don't hide it. It's not like you buy a Mac and they go, "Oh, did you know you got to buy $200 worth of dongles?" They tell you when you buy the Mac that you have to buy the dongles.
or the price of the RAM, and so sure,
Yeah.
they do some, and definitely the copycat of the apps, definitely the fact that the rules and regulations of how you get upper, you don't have a lot of clarity of where are the boundaries.
That's very true. Yeah, that's very true. And their app store is definitely they're out in the antitrust issue. Their app store is definitely probably their biggest issue.
But once you agree to get into that ecosystem, it's a pretty cool ecosystem. Okay, I understand the people who don't agree with the way Apple's ecosystem is run, but it does work. It works beautifully.
Yeah, it works. That's why I buy them, because they just work. Like, I'm never leaving where I'm working with my laptop and have to wait 30 minutes for it to update because it suddenly decided that it needed to do that. So, that's why.
And especially the last generation, the interactions between all the devices and even the earpods. Okay, I had so many headphones like Bluetooth one. It's magic to me. It's amazing. The Apple Watch is beautiful. So yeah, okay. Apple.
They're a walled garden for the purpose of how they believe design should work, and I don't think, and partially because they like walling people off for the money purpose, but also I think design-wise, it just works. I go from here to here, and they just pick up, and I think that's part of it. I don't think it's completely meant to be predation, where other things like Facebook are, Amazon are.
So maybe what could happen is they will be required to make less money, the 15 and 30% on the apps, on the subscription apps. Maybe being more open about rules and regulations and why some apps are accepted and others not. So, but it's not the end of the day for Apple.
No, they can probably adapt to anything that's coming easily. Yeah.
Amazon, that will be very, very complicated because the situation feels like I don't know. Honestly, please enlighten me because I don't see how you can solve. Let's imagine you shut down the marketplace. Okay, at the AWS, no way, they can't shut it down. They can't shut down but the marketplace. Let's say, forget it. What will happen? Alibaba takes over.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I don't think you can regulate it out of existence. I don't think that's a helpful thing. But I think they could regulate away the ability for like Amazon to undercut people by having internal data to do that.
Yeah.
Right? Because Google does keep like ads separate from organic so they don't influence each other for specifically that reason. So it could be they say to Amazon, your data has to be separate. You can't share that with the business group. Like that can no longer be a thing. And I could see something like that happening. And that would hurt Amazon for a while, but they'd adapt. We learned how to deal without getting keyword data from Google Analytics in our industry.
Sure.
Data goes away, you find another way to make up for it.
Not provided, if you remember.
Yeah,
that
was a fun one.
we thought that was the end of. Everybody thought that was the end. Not provided. We're over.
Yeah.
So yes, Amazon is definitely maybe the most difficult will be to change the mindset inside the company, and maybe not at the top executive level, but down the line, like managers and, for example, I saw how they dealt with COVID, and how they totally sold everything. Okay, they pretended to just sell the necessity, like the primary, the most. I forgot how you call that category of products that you need, like diapers and stuff.
Oh yeah, essentials.
Essentials, exactly. But they totally took a way around it. But I don't think that was at the top level. I think there was more on the national or local level where they figured out different countries had different ways to adapt to the situation and get around the rules. But
I think. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, another thought.
no, yeah, no. Just the thought about this is that uh, it has to come from the top. That the mindset needs to change, and they should be better. I hope they should do better.
I think part of the problem with Amazon is it does come from the top. I mean, everything about Amazon is to prey on, right? If you hear how they talk about their employees in that hearing, they treat them amazing. Health insurance, 15 an hour, all that. If you read the actual reports of people who have anonymously like written blogs about it or reported to reporters, they're like working with broken bones and can't go to the bathroom to pee, right? I mean, like some wear diapers literally because they don't have enough time to go to the bathroom to pee. So he doesn't treat his workers the way he said he did in that hearing. And so, and then he wanted to like launch drones everywhere, like because I want drones flying by my house every day. And then and then he does everything for the benefit of making more money for himself and Amazon. And you can't do that. Like there's always a parasitic relationship in a capitalistic society between companies and individuals, right? But it's the relationship has to be mutual. And when it's not mutual anymore, as Adam Smith said, you have to have regulation. And Amazon has put itself in the position for regulation. It preys on its own platform users. It preys on its own, its own internal clients. It calls them competitors. It preys on their pricing. It uses their data to prey on them. It preys on its own employees. So they have a bad history with being very aggressive without really benefiting those that serve them, whether it's their employees or whether it's the people on the platform or whether it's the consumer. I can get it cheaper there, but I can also get free shipping everywhere else now, thanks to Amazon. But
like the chairman said in the introduction, if a company harms people, we will choose another option. There are none.
Exactly, and they are Facebook and Amazon are the two I think that harm people the most.
So the best, our favorite for last, Google. Or Alphabet. What will how will what would be the slap they will get? That's a complicated one, I think.
It is. I think the only thing that really is up for the bad SEO of the Republican websites hurt them, but I didn't think I heard anything else in the hearings that talked about anything other than. Did I miss something?
About Google, well, anyway, the only problem is definitely with the way they need to make money because.
Oh, right. Yes. Sorry, I did miss something. Yeah.
No, it's all. No, you didn't miss anything. It's all about ads. It's all about the way everything is 90%. Google is 90% of search, and half or 40 or 50, depending on the studies, percent of the homepage are Google properties. 60% of the searches end up on a Google site.
I do think, and I did overlook this just because it just slipped my mind for a second. The layout of the Google organic page is a problem, and that is because it's now designed to keep people on the page. And so, like the featured snippet, taking somebody's content, putting it up there with an attribution, not illegal, not a violation of copyright law, but is it really better for the user not to go to the website where the information is? Maybe not. I mean, I know Google says it is because you get an instant answer, but maybe you should get the context of that answer. Maybe you should see the whole page that somebody wrote about that content, right? As opposed to just the 4-item list or the one paragraph that's pulled out on a featured snippet. Or people also ask, maybe they shouldn't go forever. Maybe they should. And so I think that they'll use so much of those spaces to keep people on that page, to keep people from clicking off Google, that is an issue. Because if it's just one or two, it'd be different. But some Some of them in mobile are literally every feature you can imagine, every carousel, every tab, everything before you get to result, and not so far down you never get there.
Well, it's I think it's about 50,000 queries that represent 80% of the needs. So those are the queries that any search engine is really targeting. 50,000, that's not so many. The rest is for power users. And in my opinion, the problem is weather, time, game results, election results, whatever it is. Yeah, straight up facts, easy facts. How to tie a bow tie, okay? How to change a tire. Fine, just give me one result, make my life easier. But once we get into some more granular stuff, some more, it's failing. It's totally bad, and we spoke
Yeah.
about it in different podcasts. It's so bad that Jeff Dean and Ben Gomez were asked out because the idea seemed good, but the execution, no,
Terrible.
terrible.
Yeah, I can't. I literally, when that when people came out with that study, and then they adjusted it, so I don't know what the final result was, but that so many of Google searches don't result in a click because they're all taking off those featured snippets and stuff. I'm like, did anyone check to see how many people are refining searches? Because I sometimes have to do 8, 9, 10 refinements just to get what I'm trying to find, and I do this for a living, so I shouldn't have to do 8, 9, 10 refinements to get a simple result back. Um,
You know what was crazy? It took me like 4 or 5 research to find the official house community website. House.
it's not crazy though, because that's okay. So their micro moment search with the simple facts, that's easy to retrieve, right? I want to know a score for the Knights game here in Vegas. Yeah, just quick, bring that back. When you're talking about complex issues or philosophies or research or whatever, those are entities that now have to be mapped. And I think they did a much better job when they didn't try to know what the sentence was saying. I think when they had like a million links that said this is a dog, and then the content said this is a dog, and they didn't need to know what the dog was. They just knew that page was about something called dog. Someone typed in dog, and in fact, I think in this attempt to know and understand has become like language, right? If you and I talk, and I use the wrong word in a sentence, you may not know what I mean, and that's where Google's gotten to. Like, if you do you speak German? I forget.
It was my first language in high school,
Okay,
but that
so,
doesn't.
well, you might remember this because I'm not fluent anymore. I was fluent at one point, but in English or French, you can kind of infer meaning in sentences. In German, you cannot. If
Hmm.
you do not know the words in that sentence, there is no inferring the meaning, right? And that's how Google's gotten. It's trying to understand the language, but if it doesn't understand one word in that sentence, it doesn't understand what you're asking. I just went through that
Hmm.
this today looking at the big tech hearings for why Twitter wasn't there. I had to rephrase it 5 times to get results
Hmm.
that were why Twitter wasn't there, as opposed to talking about Twitter in the hearing.
But in German, you have one word that could be
Oh
like
yeah,
an entire
that's also
paragraph,
true.
right? It's just-
Because if you know every word in that word, you know what the word means. Like Fußgängerzone, foot walking zone. Oh, pedestrian area.
There's an interesting comment by our friend Remco here because he's saying that Google wants max user satisfaction per user, but he's also stating that there is the alternative, like Joe Rogan podcast or this kind of talk. And I also like the example of emailing. In 2020, my favorite distribution channel is still emailing. An email done right, it's like a moment between the reader and the content creator, just you and I, for a certain, and there is no like multitasking. No, you're reading the email, and if it's
Email's the highest was last year. Sorry, I don't know if this year was the highest converting uh, form of contact over ads over anything else. Was well written email was the highest converters.
it's mine by
Yeah,
far. by far, the most, the highest by far, like really by far. And the framework is constructed in a way like YouTube and so on, where you think that short content is better, but I think it's also not the platform's fault. It's also the way human beings. I mean, people make Facebook, people make YouTube. You know what I'm saying? Like how much does Facebook change human nature? They just over-optimize the way people behave. They take advantage of the way people behave. But deep down, people will always look for the most convenient. Entire humanity, since day one, since some dude started to make like a weapon, and the other one started to make fire, our entire life, our entire evolution is towards an easier, more comfortable life. Everything, we're more and more entitled. And these platforms are just a magnifier of human behavior at the end of the day. Yes, maybe. Yes, they influence it, but they don't. The flaw is in the way maybe people need to change. Like for example, let's go back to Earth. Let's go back to our job as SEO. Let's go back to my decision on this channel to say the truth like it is. I don't care about the consequences. I don't care if John Mueller doesn't like what I say. I don't care if such agency or it doesn't matter. It's my truth. I tell it what it is, but I'm free of doing this because I don't need the money, because I'm at a certain point in my career where. But then I understand that if unless you reach that level, well, you are just a big prisoner of society, and to be a free soul is something very special in this world.
Yeah, true. We're fortunate that way in what we do, right? Because most of us work from home. Some of us choose to work in agencies, but could work at home if they wanted to.
Oh, yeah. No,
we know people all over the world. We travel the internet.
But even beyond our job, like I think you qualify for what I call a free soul. Okay, so somebody who your Eiffel Tower, I see behind you. You build your world, you build your building, and then that's a good mindset. And a lot of people are not into that mindset. They need to take advantage of other people. They need to.
Yeah.
And we started with politics, and the way I studied politics, and I just don't get involved in politics. I quit. Okay, I totally quit politics. I just don't even believe in anything.
I get myself in trouble, but it's necessary right now.
You know, I'm not even an anarchist. I'm not even like a revolution. I'm just like whatever. Okay. whatever system, nothing works. Nothing. So when you go to that level, are you free or are you an outcast? Are you? I don't know. But the fact is that society needs some boundaries. You need to be less free, to be able to be more safe or more. Trade-offs. It's all about trade-offs.
Well, and sociologically speaking, you need the boundaries of society to define humanity. So, like, killing's a crime, right? But killing somebody because they're about to kill you, not a crime. So there's human nature, and then society defines the acceptability of certain types of human nature. And then we push and pull against that, and that's what politics is.
let's finish with this device
Okay.
because this is symptomatic
Wait.
of the change of behavior. Do you use notifications?
Yes.
Or are you very selective on your
Yeah, I'm
notifications?
selective. I don't want to hear them all the time.
I quit notifications. I totally quit. Well, I have an assistant, so it's different because she's my. People know that.
Or someone else has to get your notification.
So she, yeah, it's a human notification. But the way notification is a symptom that really I got interested in the way this whole notification thing evolved and in the way you needed to be like on the spot, on the moment. Nothing can wait. It's right there, right now. And I love when I'm having lunch or something with someone who has a lot of notifications and the phone is like lighting up or buzzing. The person wants to.
There's a researcher who did studies on just the presence of a phone at a table, like not notifying, not even necessarily on, just that presence changes the interaction between the people. So, like if you put your phone on and upside down on the table,
7 or 8. It was BlackBerry was the thing. iPhone doesn't exist. It was BlackBerry, and I remember at the door before was texting, and you had a table full of people, and nobody was interacting with each other. So even back then, and we won't go back, and it's definitely for the better. It's more practical. It will always be more practical, and people are addicted to something that is making your life easier. And why not? Why not?
I think it's there's many good things, but on the subject that we were talking about with the antitrust, I do think companies when you have when you have a $1 trillion market cap, you have multiple companies coming on $1 trillion, right?
Yeah.
There's something askew in the system that needs to be corrected, and whatever that happens to be, because like someone said, they should have had 4 hearings. Each company should have had its own hearings.
True.
That's just because they're in tech; they don't have the same problems. But when you have companies with that much power, when you have companies where you have to regulate what happens so they can't change the election, and I don't mean Google, I mean Facebook. You know, they're too big, and I don't mean they have to be broken up into tiny pieces, but something needs to change. My publisher shouldn't be starving when he has tons of traffic during COVID because they decided to drop the prices to nothing.
Mm.
So I think that there is a room in there for change and for companies to be better corporate citizens. But no, we're not going to get rid of everything. We're not going to go back to the old days. We have to pull the map out in the car and like try to guide ourselves, but read the map.
There's a comic book. I think I have it somewhere around here, but it's called the Private Eye. You want type of thing, so you could pay zero. And the story goes that the cloud exploded, so everybody's secrets got revealed because people say that, oh, whatever the profiling, I don't have anything to add. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Wait until can you really? That's the question I'm asking people. Can you really live with whatever you uploaded on the cloud, even if you think it's private, if it gets out? Can you live with it?
It's like when I was younger and my mom would say, whatever you say to other people, if you saw it on a billboard,
Mm.
would it hurt you
Yeah.
or upset you? And I would always think about that before I spoke, right? I was like, oh, I wouldn't want this coming back to me. But very true. And the other thing is, I go to DEF CON every year, and not this year because we didn't have it, but normally. And there's a guy, Moxie Marlin Spike, and he's very famous in that world. And he wrote an article about you think you have nothing to hide. And this is a few years back, but he went through like the average person, I think he said commits like 2,500 crimes every day online. So his point at the end of it was that you don't want to rely on the people making the laws to decide whether what you're doing online is legal or illegal, right? You want privacy. So, and there's also a lot of sociological writing and research on the fact that people need private spaces to make mistakes.
Sure.
So if I make a mistake when in our day, it wasn't on a YouTube video that would haunt me until I was 70 years old, right? It's like, it's nobody knew. My friends might know I did something stupid, but nobody else knew. And yes, that is a big concern today. And it is a big concern how much these companies have data on all those things that are done online. Like I said, I wrote an article about Facebook's facial recognition. They don't even need to see your face to recognize you. They can do it by body type or.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Although the good thing is I did an experiment with it and it's really easy to change it. So that do they think it is?
Okay, got it.
I did it with a dog and a cat
Uh-huh.
because they looked like kind of human the way they were pictured. And I was able to change the dog to the cat and the cat to the dog.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, I see how you can trick
Yeah.
it. Yeah, totally.
You can change it. But it is a very
Easy, how easy it is now to control your history, how Google records your history and so on. Okay,
no,
it was a couple of weeks before the hearing, and now you have that super easy feature where you can say after 1 week, 30 days, 90 days, your data gets deleted. Well, before you had to go into your dashboard and so on.
Oh, right. That's right. Yeah. I've never seen that.
But I tried it, and it doesn't work. Or it didn't work. It didn't work. I couldn't make it work. So it wasn't easy. And Google CEO brought it up during the hearing. And right before, I didn't read it, but 4 hours ago, I received a Google Ads, important updates about GDPR compliance. Dear partner, blah, blah, as a result of a recent Court of Justice of the European Union ruling on data transfers. We will updating our existing. So I think Google or Alphabet understood the message, and they're anticipating on the outcome of this hearing, and they are trying to make things right. And I think that's the good way to look at it. It is what it is for all of them. We can't go back. We can't take away all the businesses they destroyed. We can't take away all the bad they did. But again, give credits to Google. Even if their thing didn't work, well, it was a nice move trying to make it easier for people to delete their search history. Didn't work. Try to delete your search history on YouTube to see how many clicks you have to do to go there. So yeah, Google or Alphabet, YouTube also. You have to make it easier to delete your search history and so on.
I successfully stayed off of Chrome for my search history until just a few years ago. And then Firefox came out with an update where it made it unusable, and I had to go over, and I was so bummed. I was like, I've gone this far without having to create a search history in Google with Chrome. And
Same here. You remember when Firefox went crazy and started to it was more processing power used by Firefox than a video game. So I switched to Chrome, and I switched back to Firefox. But yet again, they didn't bring up the whole Android, Chrome. They are DNS providers. They are registrars. They are everywhere, like in every single aspect of our lives. So that's also kind of a monopoly over our digital life, which is the real problem, in my opinion, because there are no alternatives. Like there are no alternatives to Amazon shopping. There are no alternatives to having Google at one point in your life. And the crazy thing is that, especially for the Gmail and all these tools, the G Suite, if you pay, if you are going into the Google Apps program, it's pretty cool. Like no tracking, no nothing. You got a good customer support. You got all this, and it's not that expensive. It's only $5 a month. So when there is some bad stuff happening on the free Google, there are some good stuff happening on the paid Google. Go figure. like the saying says, right? If it's free, you are the product.
Yeah, always you are the product. So yeah, and there's so many deep dives into that area.
I see that Remco has a lot to say. Remco, we have to do maybe a podcast one day. I think you have a lot of things to say about this issue.
In chat?
Yeah. And, okay, let's end this. What I would say is that when is it coming out? The final report?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if they gave a date or not.
No. Well,
no. The election's coming. I don't know if it'll be really soon or not.
Well, by then I will have figured out my live streaming. Yeah.
At least then I can have this great background.
Yeah. So when that's a promise. I will have figured out my technical issues by then, so we can do a follow-up. We'll do a proper live stream.
I really enjoy these conversations
when the hearings, when the report will come out, and we do have to shoot some SEO stories and such. So don't go anywhere. We're gonna hang up for the official stream, but we have to make an appointment for the SEO stories. So anyway, I guess most of you are watching this on the replay.